Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Supatease back here with a Shadowlands kind of PvP preview for the Balanced Druid, and I'm going to specifically be focusing on Covenants, and this one is going to be the Night Fae. This was one of the Covenants that I was considering to be the worst going into it from what I was reading patch notes, and that's why I picked it first to test, because I needed to make sure if I was right, because that's all that matters is that I was right. Now, I may have been wrong, but I'll be going more into specifics with that when we get into the video. Now, if you'll remember from a video a little bit earlier, maybe months earlier from now, I went over the Balanced Druid and my gripes with it, things that were difficult or challenging with it. So one of the main things was not knowing whether or not you were going to be moving closer to an eclipse visually. So there have been some quality of life improvements to Balanced Druid since then, and you can see that on the action bar. My Wrath and my Starfire have a 2 on them, which means when I cast 2 Wraths, this will go down to a 1 when I do 1, and it'll go down to a 0. I'm now in Lunar Eclipse, which means my Starfire is buffed, and it means all of my arcane damage is dealing more, and I can extend the duration of my Eclipse by Star Surging. And then when the Eclipse ends, you'll see that the 2 will go back onto my Starfire, which means that if I press Starfire twice, I will be going back into Solar Eclipse. Now, interestingly enough, that little kind of green puddle you saw shoot on the ground there, this right here, Spiked Burrs, is actually part of the Night Fae Covenant. And part of the reason why it's difficult for me to decide whether or not you should write Night Fae off entirely, not even really think about it if you're interested in PvP. I'm going to also take into consideration the game as a whole, because when you pick a Covenant, you can go back, I think, but you're not going to have the same progression as you had in it. It's going to be really not fun time. You want to make sure you pick the Covenant that's going to suit your playstyle the best. So you might be like me, where your focus is arena, but you're also going to do the dungeons. You're going to do a raid. So you want something that can at least for me at least, cross all 3, but still have, okay, this is, it's close to my best option for the thing that I want to focus on. Now, when you pick a Covenant, you'll get 2 spells. So you may notice them on my action bar. The one right here, Soulshape. This is basically Ghost Wolf with a poopy blink on a really long cooldown. As a Druid, when I was using it yesterday in some arena skirmishes, which of course the PvP tuning hasn't happened yet. It's kind of just like, yeah, you go in there. It's still pretty fun the way that it is, but they haven't gotten yet to the polishing part of PvP, so I'm not going to go too much into depth of it. And if you want to see all of that PvP action, you can find it on my stream, twitch.tv/Supatease. But as a Druid, the Soulshape, teleporting around as this, is generally slower than just shapeshifting into travel form, which I can't do here because I'm in Orgrimmar, but basically it looks like this. You turn into a fox, and you start blinking, and it has a cooldown, but you can also cast if you activate it while in Balanced Druid form, but it lasts such a short duration of time that I wouldn't recommend it. But it doesn't end up having that much use in PvP. Right now in the city, you can see it lasts indefinitely, but it does not outside of a rested area. You don't get this infinite. If you got infinite Fox, yeah, it would be really good, but you don't get infinite Fox in PvP. And most of the time I noticed that I was kind of frustrated with it. You can go into your Covenant talent tree and get the benefit of that when it ends. You get a stealth. You can go into stealth. But as soon as you move or do anything, it's canceled. And I don't believe that it removes damage over time effects. Now, if it does remove damage over time effects, it ends up being pretty good just to remove dots. And then also you stealth. You avoid a cast for a second. But right now it feels a little bit more clunky than just power shifting like a Druid would. Now, maybe as a different class that won't be the case, but of course we're focusing on Balanced Druid. Now, this ability that I'm about to show you, the second part of the Covenant, which is class specific to Druid, which is Convoke the Spirits. For Balanced Druid, this feels really insane. I don't know if it will feel as insane for a Resto Druid or a Feral. Again, we're focusing on balance. But for Boomkin, if you get this, you will basically 100-0 someone over 4 seconds. And basically what it is you press it, and your Druid just starts casting Boomkin spells. Just everything. I'll show you right now. It's kind of like a firework fiesta, right? So you press Convoke the Spirits, take the hands off the keyboard, and then you just let it do what it's going to do. Now, if there's only one target in front, this may be the downside of this, is if you fight classes that have pets, so Death Knights, Hunters, Warlocks, it doesn't seem like it prioritizes your target. So anything that's in range of you or in front of you or what, it shoots behind you, so apparently it doesn't even matter if it's in front of you. Not 100% confirmed. I don't think it goes through line of sight, but if there's a lot of pets, you're star surging pets, you're wrathing pets, you're gonna get wasted damage. That is a significant downside to this specific ability. Now, if you're able to isolate a target and hit everything into the one target, you kill it 100-0. I had some duels yesterday where I was able to get away, and it would be able to kill somebody 100-0 basically if they didn't have a cooldown. And you can benefit from things like the Stellar Drift talent, which I've started to play a bit more now that Starfall has changed. So you put Starfall on yourself, you get a circle around yourself, and you can run and cast. Now you can run and cast Convoke the Spirits. So if someone's chasing you, with our trusty new Stampede that's back here, you can use a sprint, go into balance form, Starfall, and move cast while sprinted away from them. And that seemed to be like one of the most consistent ways for me to get the spell off, because it can be interrupted, stunned, anything. And it's really annoying to get this off, especially with the way that I was testing it in PvP, which is just double DPS and no healers. The game ends really fast. But in an environment where you're playing with, let's say, another caster, like a Warlock, and you have a healer, that will be able to stall the game a little bit with you and help you with the crowd control, this could end up being very powerful. But still, the downside is pets, wasted damage. You can see, let's say I wanted to... This was my target that I wanted to kill in front of me, right? So I used my Starfall to get Stellar Drift. I Convoke the Spirits. So I got maybe one Star Surge into the target that I was intending to kill. Now, it's still a ton of damage to everything, so if you're playing with an Affliction Warlock and your strategy is to just kind of do damage to everything, it doesn't really matter, just dot everybody and hit everyone, now it's no longer a downside. But if you're playing with a mage, I guess the next step would be to test whether or not it breaks crowd control, which I can't imagine that it doesn't not break crowd control, because Starfall is AoE on the ground and it casts Starfall. And you can see when you went into melee range, it casted Thrash. But if you're not in melee range, I don't believe it will cast any of those feral abilities, and you really don't want it to cast any of those feral abilities. You want it to be doing Star Surge as much as possible for the maximum amount of damage. And another thing to consider is that it will also cast heals. So I was trying to think of combos. Now Heart of the Wild is back. It's a 5-minute cooldown, and you get 30% more healing. So my idea was that because Convoke the Spirits is a 2-minute cooldown, it doesn't line up with Incarnation, because Incarnation is a 3-minute cooldown, and it doesn't line up with Heart of the Wild because Heart of the Wild is a 5-minute cooldown. You could basically cycle it with combos. You could do one Convoke the Spirit with Incarnation. This would obviously be a damage Convoke the Spirit. But let's say your team is losing, you're falling behind, you could use a Heart of the Wild Convoke the Spirits, and I would think effectively, as long as you get the channel off, your whole team goes to full health. So let's say everybody's on the brink, you're about to lose, or even one target is about to lose. You could do a Heart of the Wild, Convoke the Spirits. So those were the two combos that I was thinking with Night Fae in particular. But it's still very difficult to get off. So let's just do the full combo here while it resets in just 6 seconds. So let's say I was going to do a damage one. So in PvP, I would obviously want to have dots on things. Let's say 3 targets because it's arena, right? Then I would use Incarnation to get all my haste. I would Starfall. I would Stampede. Maybe I would Stampede first, then Convoke, and then I can move, right? And then this is the big pump. And then you would dump all the extra astral power that you generated, right? And that would be kind of your burst window, right? That would be all your damage. You would get one Convoke the Spirit outside of a cycle, or you would have to wait a minute to line it up with Incarnation. But that would be your aggressive burst. You also have tools like Vortex. You could hold the targets away from you if you're going Resto Affinity, which right now it feels like you will go Resto Affinity. Swiftmen felt like it was a reasonable heal in PvP so far, much less than the Guardian Druid. But you also get Incapacitating Roar's Guardian, so maybe that's good. If you've got a rogue chasing you down, you can do the Incapacitating Roar into a Cyclone, try and slow down the rogue a bit. That gives you a lot of extra utility. But the Vortex gives you the option of holding people in. And if you want to check out my Balanced Druid video for Shadowlands, a lot of this information is still relevant to it. The stuff that I talked about at the start has really been all that I've seen that's of significance in terms of changes. So now that we've gone over the Soulshape and Convoke the Spirits, my ideas and my thoughts of them, I'm just going to go back to the little kind of Covenant hall. It's like a class hall, but it's a Covenant hall. And when you go to a Covenant, you'll have 3 talent trees is what it looks like to pick from. And then those talent trees will give you a certain benefit. And there's some pretty important ones. When I go into my Necrolord's Balanced Druid video, which should be the next video after this one, I'll be talking about the best build I think for that, what you get overall for the Balanced Druid. Is it going to be the right pick for you in the game as a whole as well? I'm trying to take that into consideration. So if you go Night Fae, now that we're just kind of teleporting and the loading screen's taking a while, not just PvP, right? Not just thinking about PvP, but also thinking about quests or thinking about raids or thinking about Mythic Plus. Is Night Fae still going to be a good option? Now, Convoke the Spirits is still insane damage, right? But it could break crowd control, although if your goal is to just, again, burst multiple targets, which usually Mythic Plus trash ends up being like that, it's just a massive burst damage window. You could still also use it with Heart of the Wild for a big heal, so you could be like a backup healer in a raid, or even a backup healer in Mythic Plus specifically. So I don't think that it's completely awful as a pick, but when I was looking at Venthyr, it seemed like they were much more focused at offense. They have certain things that are, there's more crowd control on their talent trees. There's more just you get damage, but it was very focused around crit, which in PvP isn't as powerful, and I'm going the completely wrong way to get to my class hall. This is Oribos. This is kind of like your new Shatrath, where everybody hangs out and all this stuff. And on the beta, you got access to look at a whole bunch of other stuff. It's just the testing phase. So from my understanding, I have to find a teleporter, go down, and then go through a portal to be able to get back to the Night Fae Covenant Hall. Although the teleports aren't here. Am I missing something? Oh, there it is. It's, of course, it's the last one, right? You got to make me look silly. But this is like your new Shatrath. There's great animations. And then all the portals leading to each Covenant. So you got Bastion for the Kyrian. You got Maldraxxus for the Necrolords. Then you got Ardenweald here. And this is going to be ours if you pick Night Fae. And you're going to go here. And this zone looks beautiful. Like, I mean, the artwork overall in this expansion, like, is amazing. Why is this not working for me? Oh, there we go. And then you get this. This is an experience the first time you go through it. It's kind of getting spoiled for you if you want to wait to see it when it goes live. Maybe just skip over the next next 30 seconds of the video. But at the same time, I am worried that this cool animation thing is going to get a little bit worn down once you do it multiple times. But if you're doing it for the first time, I think this is pretty cool overall. But so again, speaking to Night Fae specifically, because Convoke the Spirits appears to be so powerful in terms of damage, I think it will still have play in PvE. Now, Druid is arguably one of the more mobile classes, so you don't really get benefit from Soulshape. That's in PvP and PvE, so maybe you take that into consideration. Maybe you would benefit if you're more focused on PvE. You would benefit more going for Venthyr and focusing on things that give you crit and give you damage. That might be an option for you. But here we go. We're in Ardenweald. Beautiful zone. It reminds me of like Ori Blind Forest a little bit. So this will be like your home base also if you pick this Covenant, and you'll get a mount and you'll get a certain transmog that you can upgrade over time as well if you're worried about taking cosmetics into consideration here when you're making your choice. But we're going to be flying down to the heart of Ardenweald where our talent tree is. Another thing to consider as well is that you're going to be flying back to this area to change this. Now, I don't know how frequently you'll be able to change it because there's a currency, I believe, that locks you to changing it. So if that currency is really time consuming to get, you won't be changing these talents very much. So it's very important that you consider all the options before you make the choice, which can be very difficult. I mean, if you're a PvP player, you're going to make your decisions around what's powerful, right? I mean, most people are only going to play with you if you're playing the most powerful or close to the most powerful spec, class, or composition. So if you're making a bunch of your choices too far ahead and we don't know yet what's the best, and then you pick a spec that ends up being a BFA marksmanship hunter or a BFA affliction lock, well, you just put a lot of time into something and commitment into something that you're going to have a struggle just even getting games with, which is the big downside with the permanent choices that it appears Covenants are going to be. But we're going to land here in the heart of the forest, and we're going to go over to the talents, and we're going to peek at them. Now, something to consider for Balanced Druid is the weaknesses of the spec, right? So what do we not have as a Balanced Druid? We don't have slows. If we spec Fairy Swarm, we have a slow that's a disarm. We have Typhoon, that's a very long cooldown, not very long duration. Slow. So slows are generally the weakness and what you don't have. Now, fortunately for us as Night Fae, we actually get slows. So that little circle that you might have saw that I was attacking a training dummy, you shot a circle on the ground. It kind of looked like the old wild mushroom explosion with a snare. That's what this is. So in this talent tree, if you pick Naya to be your kind of soul conduit partner, I believe this is what this is called. This is where you also get when your little ghost fox ends, you go into stealth, which is better than stay on the move because you're not killing anything in arena, so you don't benefit from a reduced cooldown. But going into stealth to dodge a Chaos Bolt cast or something right at the end might be valuable to you. That's something that's going to have to be played out with a little bit more into the future. Now, the other options, Naya's Tools, Poison, you don't really have interrupts as a bouncer. It's a 1 minute cooldown, so you're not like a Feral Druid, right, who's going to be interrupting multiple times in a minute. This doesn't benefit you very much, so I didn't go for it. And then your helpful spells have a chance to apply Nia's Invigorating Herbs, which is just a little bit of extra haste. So we don't really need a little bit of extra haste. Getting a slow that you can kind of use to navigate around the map, and it does a bit of damage, it felt like the best pick for the Balanced Druid. Now, maybe if you're playing with a class that has a ton of slows, like a Death Knight, you don't need that. Then you can go for the haste instead. Another thing to consider is the soul conduits. Now, from my understanding, there's potency, there's finesse, and there's endurance. Right now, there are no specifics to Druid. So if, for example, a potency conduit is something crazy, I don't even know, like Star Surge damage is increased by 50%. Now, and the other ones do nothing. Let's say they're useless, they don't do anything. And this one's 50% Star Surge damage. Now, your choice here becomes a little bit difficult because you want 50% Star Surge damage, but I can't interrupt every minute, so this one's not that good. But the 50% damage makes me go down this path over picking the slow or over picking a little bit of extra haste. So that's my concern with this. Now, whether or not they do make that much of an impact, the types of conduits that they come up with could determine whether or not you can even go for the things that are available. But right now I thought as like a first pass for the Covenants, you're actually able to look at it and to judge whether or not Night Fae should really be on your radar, that this would still be a good idea. Now, some of these talents are kind of just overall gameplay in the world, like gathering herbs or getting resources and stuff like that, quality of life. It doesn't have much impact on your combat, but some of them do. Now, this row is kind of one of those things that doesn't have much impact on your combat. You're a druid, you move fast, you don't really need movement speed. You're not defeating enemies in arena, so you don't really benefit from this too much, which is why I didn't go for it. I went for this one, which is, again, just a quality of life to the game overall, to my understanding. Now, I haven't looked into like the World Quest experience of Shadowlands, so as to whether or not this is going to be a massive help, unsure, but it seemed like a lot more than 20% movement speed when you kill something, for me specifically. But again, this choice could be decided by, because once you pick this one, right, I can only go down to a potency conduit. I can no longer go down to an endurance conduit. So with this choice, because these are just quality of life and don't affect the gameplay that I want to specialize in, if the endurance conduit is better than the potency conduit, I will pick Swift Patrol even though I don't care about getting Swift Patrol because I want the Endurance Conduit, which is a gem. Like, just think of these as gems. You throw it in, and they're going to give it an effect. Like, super powered gems, they'll give it an effect, and those effects have not been made yet, so we can't see them. But take that into consideration when you're picking your conduit trees, is to make sure that there isn't an amazing endurance conduit. So you're like, oh, that's kind of quality of life, but then, oh no, I forgot about the endurance conduit. Because to my understanding, going back on this, you're going to need a reservoir anima. I don't know how hard that is to get when the game is actually live. On the beta, it looks like you just get them, but it's a little bit different. And then here, when you use your Night Fae class ability or spell, you gain 10% mastery. This is a great combo with the Convoke the Spirits. So you just get 10% mastery, which is just an insane amount of damage overall, which is why I was playing with Nia, or Naya, is because I get slows. I could get this stealth to interrupt a cast on myself, but it's very hard to get it to actually work. But the 10% mastery, and this is kind of your like omega one-shot balanced druid build with the Night Fae, which is, to me, it looks like that's the strength of it. So if you're somebody who likes doing random BGs, sitting in the back, kind of just blowing people up with insane damage, and then keeping your distance with the Ghost Fox while still being viable in the other parts of the game, like your raids and your dungeons, then this is going to be a really good pick for you. Now, if you're like super try-hard, high-rated arena player, you're going after Gladiator rank 1, when I've looked at this, you're probably considering Necrolords, and that's going to be in the Necrolord video, so you definitely want to be subscribed to the channel here to move into it. But we still have two other choices, right? So this is the build that I went with specifically, and when the conduits actually come out, I'll have more information on that. But the other options here, when your Soulshape ends, you increase the movement speed of nearby allies. Generally speaking, the way you're going to use this in PvP is your healer gets crowd controlled. You're going to go into Ghost Fox. You're going to blink around, and you're going to run. You're not going to be next to any of your allies. So this doesn't really benefit you too much in PvP. It doesn't really benefit you at all. There might be some luck of the chance, and it's not even that much movement speed. So it's not a big deal. You'll get an endurance conduit when that information is available. We'll be able to sort of provide you where you should pick this kind of stuff, right? When at least 2 allies are within 8 yards, your versatility is increased by 5% for 5 seconds. When this expires, 2 nearby allies gain this bonus for 5 seconds before passing it back to you. Now, as a feral druid playing with a melee class, that seems very good. Versatility makes you more durable. You pass it around to your warrior, whatever else you're playing with. But as a balanced druid, you generally don't want to be near anybody. You want to be far away. So I didn't end up going with this. Now, maybe if you're playing with a melee 2 as well, so a warrior, and they're attacking your target that's in melee range, like a cleave, then you'll both be benefiting from the versatility, right? So it could have use there. And depending on how good an endurance conduit is, could then further determine whether or not this is a good pick for you. The one that caught my eye, again, because we spoke earlier about it, the weaknesses of the balanced druid is no slows. This gives you a slow. It gives you a 90% slow. I think that might be the strongest slow in the game. It only lasts probably 1 second, but it's still the strongest slow in the game. So if I root, stun, or incapacitate a target, and then their movement speed is slowed by 90%. So it turns your root into a mega slow, your bash into a mega slow, your incap roar into a mega slow. So I was trying to go into Night Fae and see overall what it is, and it seems like slows, heavy burst damage, and mobility is kind of where it lies right now. And then Empowered Chrysalis, 10% of your overhealing received or done remains as a shield on the target up to 15% of the caster's health. Could be okay, depending on if you're not the target, to go for this. If your healer is just giving you a renew or something, that's giving you a shield slowly. But generally, balanced druids are the target, so I don't see you benefiting too much from this, which is why I didn't go for it. But again, you'll get a finesse conduit. If a finesse conduit is better than a potency or an endurance, you might just go down this tree anyway. This information not available. You go to potency conduit again, and then you get your choice here, which is, again, these seem like they're just quality of life. When following more than 20 yards, you get a slight slow fall. Not too much impact overall. And then every 1 hour spent in a rest area grants you increased gold from your next world quest. You complete stacks up to 5. So a little bit of extra coin in my pocket, or slow fall when I can already have tons of ways to prevent slow or fall damage. This is not too big of a deal, right? But if your finesse conduit's better than your endurance conduit, then you will go for it. Even if it's like you have to give up a little bit of gold, you got to go for the performance, right? Now, this last one is pretty crazy. When you would take damage that would kill you, instead rejuvenate within a wild seed, regaining 30% of your HP over 10 seconds. If the wild seed takes more than 10,000 damage during this time, you die. So it's a cheat death with a caveat, right? And I have 20,000 health. So that's half my health bar, right? So if I regain over 10 seconds, I'll res. This is a 30-minute cooldown. So to my understanding, this wouldn't work in Arena because it's longer than, I believe, is it 6 minutes or 10 minutes? It's either 6 or 10. So if a cooldown is longer than 6 or 10, it usually doesn't work in Arena. But at the same time, I have heard in interviews recently with Ian that they want as many things as possible to work everywhere. And they don't want to completely disable something. So if this does work in Arena, that's really good, right? Because you're generally a target. So you could go a full defense balanced druid build with this setup if you wanted to. So the overhealing, you get a bit more of a shield, and then you would get a cheat death. But this, you might, if it has a 30-minute cooldown and that goes game to game, you would only get that in one game, and then you'd have to wait 30 minutes. So again, but this is something that I'll be testing on my stream, twitch.tv/Supatease, to see if it works out. And then the last talent tree option you'll have here is Korayn for the Night Fae, and Horn of the Hunt here. Soulshape increases the movement speed of allies by 10%. Again, in PvP, you're not going to be using this to boost your ally. Maybe you would, but 10% is so small that it seems unlikely. The other option is that while you're out of combat, your Soulshape's teleport becomes a charge, so you can get charge stun. So I could go into Ghost Wolf or Ghost Fox, target somebody, and then charge stun them for 2 seconds. So if I'm a Resto Druid maybe, or a Feral Druid, and I want to start like that, you could. But the restriction on combat makes it similar to like the classic warrior charge, which is not the most fun, because as soon as you get hit, you can't use it as a charge, so you lose this. So my pick here might actually not even be that great. Might go back on my own pick, go back over here to the Horn of the Wild Hunt, and just get a little bit of extra sprint. Again, this could be determined by whether or not a potency or a finesse socket here is better. If my finesse socket is really good, then I'll just pick the charge, and if I get to benefit from it, I do whatever. But if potency is better, then I get a little bit of movement speed and whatever the benefit is of this into another endurance conduit. And so I went for Face Your Foes. When in front of your target, your spells and abilities decrease the damage they inflict on you by 2%. So you just get 2% damage reduction. Most of the time your target's going to be in front of you unless you're stunned like a rogue, and it means that you will want to play from hitting behind against anybody who's running Face Your Foes. But 2% damage reduction. First strike, damaging an enemy before they damage you. Again, so this seems it seems very inspired from classic WoW and Warriors, so like getting your first attack, but crit doesn't do very much in PvP. It's only 10 seconds. You're never going to get that Convoke the Spirits Wombo combo off within the first 10 seconds of a game, so it didn't seem that good to me. And then hold the line. After 5 seconds standing still, you take 10% less physical damage until you move. Now this could be very good, depending on the damage breakdown for melee classes. So if Balanced Druid is struggling with melee classes, which we'll find out as I'm playing through it on my stream, then this could benefit you. You'll just get 10% damage reduction. So if a rogue stuns you, you'll already have been standing still for a long time, you'll probably get the 10% damage reduction. Again, take into consideration, if the potency conduit is insane, you might have to go for Face Your Foes. If endurance conduits are insane, you might have to go for First Strike. And if finesse conduits are insane, you'll probably have to go for Hold the Line. That then gives you a finesse conduit. And here, this is like the quality of life tier of the talents. I can save a little bit of gold because I get no durability on my weapon. Or I can have increased mount speed by 3%. It's kind of just like, it's a little bit old gold in here. This doesn't really matter, right? It's like of non-consequence. And then the last one, Final Moments. Your healing and damage to targets below 35% health is increased by 3%. And when an ally dies, this benefit is increased by 500% for 30 seconds. This enhancement may only occur every 5 minutes. So this would work in Arena even without looking at any possible alterations to it, because it's less than 6. The 3% extra damage can be nice because, so we talked about balance 3 weaknesses, slows, and finishing power. So ending a game, killing a target is hard on a balance druid. So getting 3% damage on a low health target could help you. Now, the 500% added to that is very similar to the Retribution Paladin passives in the past that I've seen. I think in Legion it came out. It was like Retribution or something. When an ally died, they got it. Either it was like an Avenging Wrath proc or an insane amount of damage. This could turn the tide depending on the pacing of the game. If it's a very close moment at the end, you were about to win and then your Warlock dies, and then you're lacking the damage to close out the game by yourself, this would give you enough damage to close out the game by yourself. So it could end up being really crazy, right? And again, this is something that I'm going to have to test, and these are kind of your options overall. So you've got snares, you've got more guaranteed damage built into the Convoke the Spirits, and slows. You've got hardcore slows or more defense, right? So this is what Dreamweaver's more about, is defense, survivability. Naya's more about snares, control, and sort of sustain damage. And then Korayn is kind of this wild card, just like you could get something absolutely ridiculous, you could not. I mean, if you're the first one that dies, you don't get this, right? So this is kind of like your all or nothing sort of wild card. Overall, now just like stepping back and kind of looking at the Night Fae as an option. If you're just a casual player who likes doing random battlegrounds and having fun blowing stuff up, and you do a bit of everything in the game, I think Night Fae is a good pick for you overall. If you're going to be trying to push rank 1 on the ladder, I think you could make it work, but it would be a lot harder than some of the other benefits that you get from the other covenants, which I'll be going over in another video. If you're going to be focusing on PvE, now again, I'm not the biggest dungeon expert. I do my plus 15s. I've done a couple mythic boss fights in my time. I'm not 100% knowledgeable on the PvE stuff, but generally speaking, you would pick this for movement to get out of mechanics, right? Now, Druid is already very mobile, so getting benefit from this might not matter too much. The only other one would be then you get Convoke the Spirits for an insane burst window. You got some mastery in the stats pages of the talents over here. You could also get that bonus damage when an ally dies in a raid, but that's very situational, and I don't really know if you want to rely on someone in your raid going down for getting extra damage to kill the boss, but I would say it's pretty average overall if you're a PvEer. Now, it could be insane, right? Convoke the Spirits could be insane in Mythic Plus. Maybe that just totally KOs a trash pull or something. And that's something that I'll be testing out as I play on my stream. But right now, Night Fae is like, I would say it's like mid-tier. You can make it work. You might have a lot of frustrations with it because Convoke the Spirits is easily interruptible and stunned. But if it's not interrupted and it's not stunned, and you combo it with Heart of the Wild and Incarn, it does tons of damage and tons of healing. And it can be just a little bit of fun, right? And if you like the cosmetics, right? So if you like the goat mount and you like the aesthetic, you can take that into consideration when you're picking your covenants. Now, this could change when the conduits come out. I would assume the conduits are the same throughout all the covenants, though. Like an endurance conduit is an endurance conduit. It doesn't matter if it's a Necrolord one or a Night Fae one. So that might not impact it too much. If anything, that might make Night Fae more viable, because if it gives you damage conduits, you could benefit from that. But yeah, so if you like the aesthetic, if you like Ardenweald, if you like Ori and the Blind Forest, if you like some kind of sarcastic jokes and the humor used in the kind of the leveling process, or at least the unlocking process for the Covenant, and you're just like the average guy, right, or the average Joe, you're just doing random battlegrounds, I think it is fun for that purpose. Or if you want to make like a PvP montage or like a kind of cool Funds 51 shot montage, I think it's pretty good. But competitive, it's not the best, but I think it is pretty close. So those are my thoughts on the Night Fae. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel here. I'm going to be pumping out a lot of Shadowlands content now that we finally got it. And the closer we get to the actual tuned PvP testing phase, then the more and more excited I get, and the more and more videos I'm going to be able to pump out to you. My goal here is to focus on Balanced Druid right now, but I'm going to do my best to move to as many specs as I can. So if you're not even just a Druid player, you'll still want to stay tuned. And I'm going to try and take into consideration the game as a whole, as well as being a PvP focus, because there's lots of different types of players in the game. But until next time, we'll see you later. Thank you for watching.